Welcome to Soul Spirit Stories, where every story touches the heart, awakens the soul, and reminds us that kindness still exists in this world. If you believe in miracles, second chances, and the power of love, then this story is for you. Story begins. It was a chilly morning in Chicago. The sun hadn't fully risen, and a faint mist hung over the city streets. The kind of morning where dreams either come true or slip away forever. Daniel Ross, a single father in his late 30s, stood in front of a mirror, straightening his worn-out tie. His hands trembled slightly, not because of nerves, but because he knew how much depended on this one interview. He looked over his shoulder toward the small couch, where his 8-year-old daughter Lily was still asleep under a blanket, hugging her favorite teddy bear. Daniel whispered softly, "I'm gonna make things better for us, kiddo. Daddy's got this." Lily stirred a little, half awake. "Will you be home early today?" Daniel smiled. "If everything goes right, I'll bring home some good news." He kissed her forehead gently and slipped out of their tiny apartment. The rent was due in 2 days. His savings were almost gone. This interview at one of the city's top architectural firms was his last chance to turn their lives around. He stepped onto the street, clutching his resume folder tightly. The bus was late, as always, and his watch ticked away the seconds that mattered more than anything, but fate had other plans. As Daniel crossed the street to grab a cup of coffee before heading downtown, he heard a terrifying crash. It came from the intersection. A truck had skidded across the wet road, slamming into a small sedan. The sound was deafening, screeching tires, shattering glass. Then silence. People froze. Some took out their phones to record. Others whispered in shock. Daniel's heart pounded. He saw smoke rising from the crumpled car and a woman trapped inside, banging weakly against the window. Without thinking twice, he dropped his folder and ran. "Hey! Someone call 911!" he shouted, rushing toward the wreck. The front of the car was crushed. The driver, a young woman in her 20s, was bleeding from her forehead, trapped between the seat and the steering wheel. Daniel tried to open the door. Jammed. He pulled harder, using all his strength. His hands burned from the twisted metal. "Stay with me." "Help's coming," he shouted. The woman coughed, barely conscious. "I can't breathe." Smoke filled the air. A small flame flickered near the engine. Someone screamed, "It's gonna explode!" And the crowd stepped back. But Daniel didn't. He tore off his jacket, wrapped it around his hands, and yanked again, until finally the door gave way with a screech. He reached in, unbuckled her seatbelt, and carefully lifted her out just as the smoke thickened. Seconds later, the car burst into flames behind them. The blast threw both of them to the ground. Daniel shielded her with his body as debris scattered around. When he opened his eyes, paramedics were already arriving. His shirt was torn, hands bleeding, but the woman, she was alive. One paramedic looked at him in disbelief. "You saved her life, sir." Daniel nodded weakly. "She's gonna be okay, right?" "She will be, thanks to you." But then reality hit him. He glanced at his watch, 9:47 a.m. His interview was at 10. He was 20 blocks away, covered in soot, no resume, no time to change. For a moment, Daniel just stood there staring at the burning car, torn between two worlds, the life he'd saved and the life he'd been trying to rebuild. He picked up his torn folder, most of the papers ruined by rain and dirt. He could have walked away, given up, but that wasn't Daniel. He ran, limping, exhausted, hands blistered, but he ran. By the time he reached the glass skyscraper of Harrison and Doyle Architects, it was almost 10:25. He rushed to the receptionist, breathing heavily. "Daniel Ross. Interview for the design position." The receptionist looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm afraid the panel has already moved on to the next candidate." "You were supposed to be here at 10 sharp. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "There was an accident. Someone was trapped. A tall man in a grey suit, Mr. Harrison himself, stepped out from a nearby office. "What's going on here?" The receptionist explained softly. He says there was an accident. Mr. Harrison frowned. An excuse is still an excuse, Mr. Ross. We value punctuality here. Daniel's shoulders sank. I understand, sir. I'm sorry, but I couldn't leave her there. She would have died. The older man looked him up and down, his dirty shirt, torn jacket, bruised hands. You're saying you risked your life for a stranger? Yes, sir, I guess I did. There was a long pause. Go home, Mr. Ross, Harrison finally said and turned away. Daniel walked out of the building, defeated. The city felt heavier that afternoon. He called Lily's babysitter to say he'd be late. Then he sat on a park bench nearby, staring blankly at the ground. For the first time in a long while, he cried. Quietly. He thought about how hard he'd tried, the sleepless nights, the endless rejections, the promises he'd made to Lily. He thought he'd lost it all. Later that evening, as he picked up Lily from school, she ran into his arms. Daddy, did you get the job? He forced a smile. Not this time, sweetheart. Her face fell. But you'll try again? He nodded. Always. They walked home together under the fading sunset, unaware that life was about to change in ways they couldn't imagine. The next morning, Daniel woke to a knock on his door. He opened it, and there stood a woman in a hospital gown, supported by a nurse. Her forehead was bandaged, but her eyes were filled with gratitude. Mr. Ross, she said softly. Daniel blinked in surprise. You're the woman from the crash. She smiled faintly. My name's Sarah Doyle. You saved my life. Doyle? He repeated, confused. She nodded. My father owns Harrison and Doyle Architects. Daniel froze. She continued, I heard what happened after I woke up. You risked everything to save me, even your interview at my father's company. I didn't know, Daniel said quietly. I just did what anyone would do. Not anyone, she replied. Most people just watched. You acted. Later that afternoon, Sarah insisted on driving Daniel back to the firm, this time as her guest. When they entered the executive conference room, Mr. Harrison was already there, visibly uncomfortable. Dad, Sarah began firmly, this is Daniel Ross, the man who saved my life yesterday. The old man looked stunned. You mean he's the one who... Yes, Sarah interrupted. And I think he deserves another chance. Harrison cleared his throat, humbled. Mr. Ross, I owe you more than I can ever repay. I misjudged you. Daniel simply said, You don't owe me anything, sir. I was just doing what was right. The older man smiled slowly. That's exactly the kind of person I want working for this company. That day, Daniel didn't just get the job. He got a new beginning. Weeks turned into months. Daniel became one of the firm's most reliable architects. Creative, kind, and deeply humble. Sarah often stopped by his desk, bringing him coffee and teasing him about his messy blueprints. Lily adored her, calling her Aunt Sarah long before. Daniel realized something deeper was growing between them. They spent weekends together, picnics in the park, movie nights, laughter that felt like home again. For the first time since his wife's death years ago, Daniel felt whole. One winter evening, as snow began to fall outside their window, Sarah found Daniel sitting by the fireplace, sketching quietly. She sat beside him. You know, my father told me something yesterday. He said hiring you was the best decision the company ever made. Daniel smiled. He's too kind. No, she said softly. He's right. They sat in silence for a moment before she added, Sometimes the people who stop to help others end up saving themselves, too. Daniel looked at her, the woman whose life he'd saved, who had unknowingly saved his in return. He reached for her hand. Maybe you're right. A year later, the firm held a major press conference to celebrate a new housing project designed by Daniel, affordable homes for single parents. When he took the stage to speak, his voice trembled with emotion. This project isn't just about buildings, he said. It's about second chances, about helping people rebuild, just like I did, thanks to a stranger who became family. The audience applauded. Cameras flashed, and among the crowd, Lily and Sarah smiled proudly, the two people who had given his life meaning again. After the event, as they walked outside into the crisp evening air, Lily slipped her tiny hand into Sarah's. "Are you going to marry my dad someday?" she asked innocently. Sarah laughed, blushing. "What makes you think that?" "Because you already love him," Lily said confidently. "And he smiles more when you're around." Daniel chuckled softly. "She's got a point." Sarah turned to him, her eyes shining. "Maybe she does." Under the city lights, with snow falling gently around them, Daniel realized that sometimes the universe takes everything from you, just to give it back in a better way. Years later, Daniel would often tell his students at community workshops that the best decisions in life are the ones made with your heart, not your clock. He never forgot that morning. The choice that cost him an interview, but gave him everything that truly mattered. A new job, a new love, a new life. And every time he looked at Sarah and Lily laughing together, he knew, sometimes, the detour is the destination.